Performance is very much about, that's our strategy, that's the big goal we're going for that we can measure in financial terms. The health side is very much about how fit are you to perform tomorrow. No matter how you're performing today, how well do we align people on where we want to go? How efficiently do we execute against that, and how effectively? And how do we renew ourselves along the way, keep our energy up and be able to continue once we even get to that target? In that part of the journey, the health part of the journey, mindsets matter a lot. How attached people are to the past, how afraid they are of the future. And again, that's where we've just lacked the tools, and say if we can bring the same degree of rigor to that part of the equation that we've built over the last 100 years in business on the performance side of the equation, that's a really powerful combination.
And we looked at 500 plus organizations. We looked at hundreds of thousands of people in those organizations. And the organizations that managed to transform their performance over time to fit better with their environment and win as new eras of competition arose, those are the companies where they got an appropriate balance between performance and health. The three conditions that Scott outlines are the three generic conditions for being healthy. But how you play those in different contexts makes a dramatic difference. So, a healthy steel mill doesn't feel the same as a healthy advertising agency, right? Now, if you accept that notion, then the job of leaders is to understand strategically where are we going? What's tomorrow going to call for from us in terms of our pattern of health? And then how can we adjust to develop the right, we call it an archetype, but the right pattern or menu or a set of combinations of the healthy components of an organization to be able to outperform in the future. And we found there are four that tend to come out a lot. There are some of the winners that really focus on execution. We call them execution edge. It's a game of inches. They drive forward every day and they just out-execute the hell out of their competitors. They're better at doing the small things every day and driving benefit. There are some companies that really focus on the market focus. They just understand their customers and tomorrow's customers better than anyone else in their industry. Of course, they want to be great at execution as well, but the distinctive capacity about them is their market focus. The third one is knowledge core, right? So organizations that leverage knowledge, they develop knowledge, they get it around the system, they utilize that better than anyone else. And the fourth and final one that we've observed, we call leadership driven. So this is perhaps the one that's hardest to get a grip on, but it's organizations where the development of leadership capacity, the leadership engine in place, allows them to manage a wide range of things, wide range of parts of businesses, in a way that gets synergy out of those multiple elements of the business.
That ability to differentiate between winning recipes is, we think, kind of a breakthrough thought in this whole idea. And just the last thing, Gary, this notion of what ingredients work well together is something we do feel when we look at some of the academic literature that has come before us has been missed. And let me give you a practical example. Say you want to motivate your workforce. So you have a number of practical things you can do to motivate your workforce. So number one, you can rewards and incentives, and give them money for this or whatever the right incentive is. Number two, you can create opportunities for people, so opportunities to grow, those sorts of things. Number three, you can kind of motivate them through the value set of your organization. And number four, you can motivate them through really inspiring leaders, right? And there might be a longer list than that, but let's just take those four. Now, you can quantitatively understand, depending on how well you do each of those practices, how much motivation are you going to get? And you know what it turns out, exactly as academic literature says, the rewards and incentives, contrary to what we naturally gravitate to, is less powerful. That's where the literature stops. What the literature doesn't do is it doesn't say, but what's the interplay between motivation and how you're trying to get innovation, and how you're trying to coordinate and do risk management, and how you're trying to get collaboration? When you put all that together, so let me just give you an example specific to this motivation. If you have a culture of internal competition instead of a culture of collaboration, for example, it's a choice you make. You then look at, if you have internal competition and rewards and incentives, how powerful is that combination to motivate a workforce? It turns out you go from kind of 50% probability to 80% probability, far more likely to motivate your workforce than if you combine an internally competitive environment with any of those other drivers of motivation. It's a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of cycle. So we've done that across 30 plus management things you can do, very practical things, and said, what are these combinations, what are these recipes, so to speak, of success?
Most change programs still fail, the great majority. So you guys have dug into that deeply as well. So talk to me a little bit about, what are the components of a change program that actually takes root and works?
Our synthesis boils it down into 5 ways of thinking about it. We call them the 5 frames. So 5 mental frames that the winners had, that the losers had less of, right? The first of those is about when you've articulated your business strategy, a business direction, really holding the mirror up and understanding, is our current level of health going to get us there? You love your people, and so there's a tendency to have kind of rosy spectacles on when you're looking at that issue. So that's the first thing, confront reality and decide what different pattern of health would be more appropriate for the world we're going into tomorrow than we have today.
The second piece of the equation is, how ready are you to get there in terms of the organization's skill and their will? On the health side, what do you do to shift a mindset? If what are the mindsets holding us back is the $1 million question, this is the $1 billion question, right? And so we would offer to leaders that there are 4 different kind of things you can do to help shift a mindset. And it revolves around the role modeling you're getting. It revolves around the communications and storytelling you're getting. It revolves around the incentives and more formal structures and processes that surround you. And it revolves around kind of the talent and skills that are being built within you. Those 4 things, we would say it's a bit like the difference between a football stadium and an opera house, in a sense, where you take someone in a football stadium, best part of the game, it's your favorite team and it's the championship, you're in the stands, you're going crazy, you're high-fiving everyone, you're probably throwing your cup full of whatever drink you're having, Now the next night you're in the opera house, and best part of the opera, amazing, crescendo, etc. What do they do at that best point? Well, they're probably not high-fiving, throwing their cup, jumping up and down, yelling, right? And that's just because the environment they're in sends them completely different messages in terms of the role modeling they're getting, the storytelling around what's right here, the formal mechanisms. So we'd say, many organizations are caught somewhere between the football stadium and the opera house, and it's a pretty confusing place to be. So being the social architect of what is it specifically that we should change in each of those arenas is what that third step is all about.
Then you've got to do the hard stuff. You've got to act. You've got to implement. And this kind of separates the winners from the losers, right? The organizations that have a tendency to say, this stuff is really important. We'll do a weekend workshop on it, and then we'll send everyone lots of memos and have great posters on the walls. The relatively few organizations that develop a distinctive level of health just think about it in a different way, and they do it in a different way. They integrate health into everything they do. So it's not just a set of one-off initiatives, largely in the human resources space. It's about integrating a health perspective into every business initiative. If you're changing, something as mundane as your accounting systems, no offense to the accountants out there, it's possible to do that just to get the new system in, or it's possible to do it in a way that manages information within the business in a different way.
As you're in that ACT phase, you can measure the health of your organization very rigorously in the same way you're measuring, did I get the work done, is it having the operational impact I wanted to, and is it having the financial impact I wanted to. You can also measure, are we having the health impacts that we want to, and adjusting the program as you go. Which kind of leads us to the last step, which is we call advance. And that really is this transition to say, you've gone through the S-curve of transformation. How do you make sure you don't just go back, that it is a real transformation? The one on the health side that is most important is the leadership side of things. What kind of leader does it take to lead continuous improvement? And in fact, this frame really links to the other 4 in the sense that we would suggest that you build your leaders throughout the life of a transformation program so that at the end of that program you have leaders who have the right mindsets and capabilities to drive continuous improvement. And what better place to develop leaders than in the crucible of a multi-year big performance and health transformation.